decades, left-wing extremism has been described as India's single biggest internal security threat. But in 2026, the government is claiming that long-standing insurgency has effectively ended. The origins of this insurgency can be traced back to 1970s, but the end marks the approach, the framework that steadily eroded the philosophy, the people, and also the thought around it. Hello everyone, welcome to Vajiram and Ravi's Flash News. My name is Shubhangi Singh and today we are going to talk about Naxalism, how it is significant that it has ended, where did it come from, and what are the consequences that we have seen across the years, and finally what brought the end to it. So let us begin with understanding that when we are talking about today's time and we are seeing that finally there has been end of insurgency, the fall of Red Corridor has happened, why it is so significant. The first factor I have already told you is because this Red Corridor, Naxalism, was considered the single biggest threat, internal security threat in our country. This threat has persisted for more than 6 decades as of now. When we look at this feat, we get to understand this is not just about dismantling of Naxalism, it is also about the fact that the conflict-ridden geography has shrunk. If you talk about 2000s, we saw that the affected districts were more than 80, but as of now the number has gone down to 11 districts. This is also significant because this has weakened the insurgent capacity across this Red Corridor. That means the leaders have surrendered or have been eliminated, and the capability of large attacks that we have seen across 2000s have been reduced. And that is why when we have eliminated one of the biggest threats that was present in our country, this becomes significant. So let us start to understand this from scratch. First, we will be talking about the origins of this insurgency. So when we talk about this insurgency, the whole idea started from Naxalbari, that is present in West Bengal in 1967. Now Naxalbari was the starting point, but this ideology was coming from Mao Zedong. That is why at places it is also known as Maoism. So this was the origin of Naxalite ideology, where we get to see that the Mao's ideology was picked up, and it was simply believed that society is divided into two sections, oppressors and oppressed. The system is unjust, and if we want justice, there needs to be overthrowing of the system through revolution. That was the belief of Naxalism. And gradually over the years, the expansion was so much that it spread as Red Corridor. When we see this given image, you will be able to see that this was the expanse of Red Corridor. We are talking about more than 80 districts, and this peak was seen in the duration of 2004 to 2010. Naxalism believed in armed struggle, it believed in protracted people's war. That means long-term struggle starting from villages going to cities, and the immense focus was on rural and tribal areas. That is why you will be seeing that the mostly densely marked areas, the red ones, the extremely affected areas, these are the ones where we see lesser development, especially when I am talking about this time. And the whole idea was to be anti-state and anti-capitalist, because state was seen as a tool of exploitation itself. So there was opposition against mining, big projects, and you can see the regions we are talking about, be it Odisha, be it West Bengal, Bihar, Jharkhand, Telangana, all these regions are places where mining is existing. So the influence over this region was driven. Now over the years after the origin, we have seen a gradual increase, because if we talk about 2004, we get the time when CPI Maoist was formed and there was merger of CPI ML, People's War, and also MCC. Now this is the time where there was peak of Naxalism which was seen, and after that we have seen Salva Judum. This was a state-sponsored counter militia which was launched in Chhattisgarh. Then we have Dantewada ambush, where we lost 76 CRPF personnel, and this was one of the worst ever Maoist attack. So during this duration, there were counter militia programs also being launched, but at the same time, the guerrilla warfare and the attacks from the Maoist insurgents was also extreme. For example, 2013, Vajiram Ghati attack. We saw 27 Congress leaders killed. And then comes 2022. We are talking about Sankalp, and that is when the concentration to address left-wing extremism strengthened. We saw Operation Kagaar, which was coordinated pan-state crackdown on left-wing extremism. We saw General Secretary Namla Keshav Rao killed. Operation Black Forest was conducted later, and 2026, the government has declared that left-wing insurgency has finally ended. So over the years, we can still clearly mark, as I said, 2004 to especially 2010 were the peak time that we saw. But the question actually arises here, if Red Corridor was this strengthened, then what was the approach that was used to weaken it out? Now, the approach and the framework that was gone from was also briefly known as SED framework, which is a three-pronged strategy. S is for surrender, E is for eliminate, D is for development. The government focused on incentivizing and rehabilitation packages so that the left-wing extremism insurgents can surrender and start their life in a different direction. More than 14,000 surrenders have been seen in the duration of last 20 years in front of us. Then focus on the people who are not there to surrender, who are not cooperating, elimination. Targeted killing of top leadership so that the whole structure, whole framework of insurgency can be eliminated. So by 2025, the top leadership was decapitated, and this was the turning point for the government. And to actually bring people, participation, community on the framework, this was the most important factor. Insurance of the fact that there will be development, that the state is there to help them, not to exploit them. Roads, telecom, education, health, welfare expansion was ensured. Operation Kagaar 2024, very important. Operation Black Forest of 2025, Sankalp, very important from the perspective of remembering that how this was tackled. Because if you look from the perspective of exam, GS3 we get to see internal security, very important point here. GS2 also, this is where we get to see governance in tribal areas. We will be talking more about that. And from the essay perspective, we can talk about development versus security. So the whole key idea here that you have to understand that how largest internal security threat has been as of now turned into fragmented residual groups, nothing more than that. Now talking more about how this was executed as a framework, we have to focus especially on the development part, because the development part came in through infrastructure push. Across Red Corridor, you will find 70,500 kilometer roads established, 19,000 mobile towers put in, banking and postal expansion so as to ensure that bringing of mainstream to the tribal and integration is ensured. If you look at the social sector, we have Eklavya schools, more than 9,000 schools established, 179 Eklavya schools. We have 70,000 Mitanin health workers. Mitanin basically is a term which we are using for community health workers, which were brought in Chhattisgarh program, which was launched as Mitanin program. We are talking about Ayushman Bharat coverage being extended. So as of now, what we get to see that the governance vacuum which give proliferation to the Naxalism in this area, and that was itself replaced with the insurgent legitimacy. So if we take away this governance vacuum, if we come there with governance and actual governance that makes an impact, then the legitimacy that came in with insurgency, that could have been easily tackled, and this is exactly what government focused on. Another important factor that we did not see the mention in the SED framework is about the philosophy fact. We started with understanding the philosophy around Maoism and Naxalism. That was another factor that was duly tackled so as to ensure the whole elimination, because ideological collapse was also important for this situation that we are seeing. When I'm talking about ideological collapse, I mean not just leadership being eliminated or surrendered, but ensuring that this continuum is not seen. So no fresh recruitment, there is no idea that no new recruits would follow, and at least former cadres, they accept the constitutional path. The ideology should shift so that there is no further addition to the ideology that was established. This ideological collapse was also facilitated by political integration. If the voters are not believing in their representatives, they are not coming to vote, that would create a huge problem. Bastar, one of the key regions, the main flagship bearer of LWE, we saw a rising voter turnout in Bastar. Return of displaced population was seen, and social indicators are also being improved. So as of now, the government does talk about that, yes, Naxalism and Maoism was responsible for causing poverty, not any other factor, and that is what government is addressing. But at the same time, government tackled all the fronts, the political, ideological, economical, so as to ensure that this internal security threat is moved out. But at the same time, we have to understand this is an ideology. We have still residual groups existing, and an ideology can gain momentum over time. If the government actually wants to ensure that this is done and dusted and this is addressed in the right direction, then it is important to move in this very direction continuously. It is important that we ensure that the tribals are strengthened in terms of right, be it forest rights and its implementation, their livelihood is ensured, their dignity is ensured, and also their participation. And the whole policing should be right based, it should not be forceful, because otherwise the ideology of Naxalism, which talks about state being an exploiter by force, might actually seem true. What are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comment section. That was all from my side. Thank you so much.